Welcome to Relationship Renegades on Fun for Life Radio. I'm one of your hosts, Rachel Brooke Smith.
And I'm Emilio Palafox.
And today we have a super special guest, the sleep doctor himself, Dr. Michael Bruce. You might have seen him on pretty much every television show ever.
I mean, Dr. Oz, 40 plus times, as well as Good Morning America, a ton of times. I mean, we can go on and on.
And on. And he has a best-selling book called The Power of When.
Correct.
Which is a mind-blowing, eye-opening book, as well as TED Talk.
Yep.
That is so informative. And as we're researching you, I'm just like, gosh, this guy is so just brilliant and really changing the game when it comes to, and some people I think are like, oh, sleep, like I don't need sleep. How much is it really going to affect my life? And I love that you're bringing this whole different viewpoint to like how important sleep is and how so many of us have fallen into this trap of trying to fit into a certain chronotype that is running the world, but it's ruining our lives if we don't fit into it.
Well, before we break that all down and start to really talk to Dr. Michael Bruce, thank you guys for showing up again. Thanks for playing full out with us. If you guys get any question or comments, you guys know where to go to our relationship tribe to ask more questions so that we can answer them live here on the radio show. But also, I just wanted to let everyone know that, you know, Dr. Michael Bruce and I first heard of his book probably at the end of 2016, going into 2017, maybe beginning of 2017.
That's about right.
And it was great. I took my, the chronotype quiz that we'll be talking about today.
Yes.
But then, and then started to, finalize and really refine certain sleep habits at that time. But one thing that I wanted to say is that recently I've had the pleasure of getting to know Michael just a lot more personally because we happen to be a part of the same men's group. You guys have heard me talk about the men's group that I'm a part of and how much I appreciate men's work and shadow work and just finding good men in your life, good friends. And so I've had the pleasure of getting to know Michael over a men's retreat in Tucson, Arizona, to being a part of this every Saturday. And so right now, guys, we're just chilling out in our living room, just doing a little floor culture from Aaron Alexander, if you're listening, and just spending quality time. So for those reasons and more, man, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for being on the show.
No, first of all, it's my pleasure being on the show, but it's more my pleasure to be your friends. I'm so excited for our newfound friendship. And so for folks out there, Emilio and I have had a great opportunity to share some very important things in our lives together. And I rely on Emilio's advice and trust him in ways that I haven't had the opportunity to trust men before. So I feel very confident and comfortable here with him and with you, Rachel, because I've gotten a chance to meet you and how special you are. And you're doing some amazing, amazing things. Things like the very first thing you started talking to me about was my daughter and your love for helping young girls, which is a big place in my heart. And I'm just stoked to be here. I mean, we're friends, we hang out. Like, this is freaking cool.
Help some people. Well, first and foremost, how did you become the sleep doctor?
So it's a story, right?
Yes.
So
we love stories. Story time. Here we go.
You guys know I'm a storyteller. So here's what happened: is I was getting my PhD in clinical psychology at the University of Georgia. So to be clear, I am not an MD. I'm a PhD. Okay. And so I was interested in clinical psychology, and I thought it was cool. And I really got actually interested in sports psychology. That was my thing. And I was doing research and I thought it was so cool because you could work with athletes and have them throw faster and hit farther and all these cool stuff. And then you get to hang out with all these super cool people. I thought it was going to be amazing. This is going to be the best job ever, right? So I'm studying my little self at the University of Georgia in graduate school. And for a PhD, when you get to the end, there's a year-long residency. So you go someplace and you basically practice all the stuff that you've been learning for the last 4 years. So that was my time to do my residency. And there was an awesome sports psychology residency. Now, it was at the University of Mississippi Medical Center in Jackson, Mississippi. Okay. Now, I'm from Sandy Springs, Georgia. So going to Jackson, Mississippi didn't seem like a big stretch to me. I know a lot of people out there might be like, oh my gosh, Jackson, Mississippi. I loved it. And the food was amazing. The people were incredible. But the program was a top-notch program. Okay. And to be fair, I couldn't get in. Okay, so I went to the University of Georgia. It was a top 20 program, but it wasn't Harvard, Princeton, Yale, and that was who was getting accepted to this residency. However, there was a side track to the residency where they were looking for candidates who were interested in sleep. I had worked my way through graduate school as an electrophysiology tech. So what the heck does that mean?
Yeah, Just gonna ask.
Right. So I'm the kid who at 8 years old, so I'm 52 years old, everybody. So 45 years ago, they used to have these things called rotary phones. You guys have never seen them, but I had them.
I remember that.
You remember those?
I've used them in movies that I've played.
There you go. Thank you for making me feel even older.
Yeah.
Right. So I was the kid that would flip it upside down, take it apart, take all the pieces apart. I would put it back together. There'd be 5 or 6 pieces left over, and it would work better.
Oh,
like I was that kid.
You're that kid,
right? And I was
Makes
always
sense.
just a tinkerer. I kind of liked working with mechanical stuff, and I needed a job in graduate school because I was, funding myself. So I started working in this electrophysiology lab. It turns out every piece of equipment that I knew how to operate is exactly the same equipment used in a sleep lab.
Wow.
I had no idea. I knew nothing about sleep, okay?
Yeah.
To be clear, I was on a path to be a sports psychologist. And so what ended up happening was I sold myself as a sleep guy because I figured once I get there, I'll just transfer.
Yeah.
Right? Like just because I'm not walking in through the front door doesesn't mean I'm not going to be in your program.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I'm going to walk in through the
Using
side
that
door.
creative
happen.
power right there. That's the creative power.
Right. Well, I was motivated, like I knew this is what I wanted to do. I was going to be a sports psychologist. We all know I'm a sleep doctor now. So obviously my path changed somewhere along the lines. So what I did was I sold myself as a sleep guy and I said, I'm just going to transfer when I get there. And I got in.
Yeah.
And I got there and I said, you know what? I'm ready to transfer. Like literally the first day I showed up and they said, nope. We have you on this track. You promised us you would do this. They said, if you want to do the sports psychology one, you can do it, but you have to first complete the sleep track.
Yeah.
No problem. By day 3, I absolutely fell in love with clinical sleep medicine.
Oh,
wow.
So
I knew it was where I was
cool.
going to spend literally the rest of my life. I help people like this.
Yeah.
It's unfucking believable.
Let's talk about how you help people, because I think people out there listening
crazy.
are like, okay, help me with my sleep, because whether they deal with insomnia or they deal with like having a really hard time getting up in the morning,
or
and
partner snoring,
yes,
or
absolutely. Or their
in bedroom
intimacy.
environment,
Yes.
intimacy. Oh, it's
everything.
all over the place, right?
We really feel like we talk about how sleep is the number one doctor.
Yes.
And so like we obviously talk about so many things on this show, but it's like I'm so glad to finally be here talking about sleep because we
With
have
the
been
sleep
kind of
doctor.
leading up to this. Yeah.
Yeah, well, especially the show's about relationships, right?
Right.
And I think a lot of people don't realize how much sleep is affecting their relationship, and not just intimacy, but their whole life.
Yeah, no, I've saved more marriages as a sleep doctor than I ever would have as a marital therapist, literally by getting people back in bed. And you don't have to be married for me to save your relationship, to be clear.
Right.
If you're cohabitating, right, there can be issues,
Yes.
right? And it doesn't matter what type of relationship you have, that cohabitating bed partner could be having some influence on you, or you could be having influence on them.
Yes.
Right?
Well,
And that becomes another big issue.
Not to mention, we talk a lot about, like the most important relationship is the one you have with yourself.
Absolutely.
And so even if your sleep is off and you don't know what time is the best time for you specifically to sleep,
right,
or how to get better sleep so that you can just show up in your life better.
Right.
Like, I know that you talk a lot about that. So what your work is so based around these chronotypes, right? That you really recreated for everybody.
I did. I did, as a matter of fact.
Tell people listening what those are and how they can find out what type they are and how they can adjust their lifestyle to improve their sleep.
Absolutely. So the idea of chronotypes addresses a very particular issue for relationships, okay? Which is, what time do you go to bed and what time do you wake up?
Yes.
Right? So how come Match.com doesn't ask this question?
Oh my gosh.
Right?
That's
Brilliant.
amazing.
Like why doesn't E fucking Harmony say, what time do you go to bed? Do you snore? Do you like it hot? Do you like it cold? Like all of these things,
Great question.
right, are very in line with our thought process when we're having a relationship.
Yes.
So for this one in particular, it's called a chronotype. Now, people may or may not have heard of the term chronotype, but actually everybody's already heard of it. If you've ever been called an early bird or a night owl, these are chronotypes.
Nice.
Okay? So the good news is there's not 2, there's actually 4. So back in the 70s, there was a group of guys and ladies actually who created a questionnaire called the Morningness Eveningness Questionnaire, the MEQ. Okay?
Okay.
And people would take it and they would say, oh, I'm an early person. Oh, I'm a night person. Well, after a while, people started to try to understand, like, why? Like, why are you an early person and a night person? It turns out it's genetic. This isn't something that you actually choose, which most people think. Most people think, oh, I'm going to choose to be an early bird, right? So, when you look at, and this is a little bit of a tangent, but when you look at people who force themselves to be an early bird, right? Because they think that they're going to be successful, because they've seen all of these people out there who wake up at 4:30 in the morning, right?
Yes.
The whole idea of a miracle morning or waking up
4 a.m., 5 a.m. club.
Like
all these things.
Right, like the 5 a.m. club. So that's the stupidest fucking idea I've ever heard. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay?
Because my whole life I felt like I wasn't good enough, or I didn't.
You failed automatically.
Yes, automatically.
Because
I'm
you're
not a morning person.
Right. And guess what? You're not a morning person. And that's okay. It's in your genetics, right?
Thank you.
I'm never going to dunk a basketball. I'm 5'9", and I'm just not going to get there. Okay? But I can accept that about myself, right? And I think the theme of your show is about self-acceptance.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Self-acceptance, because that helps with the relationship
Self-love
growth
and
and all of that.
Yeah.
So here's the ultimate self-acceptance, right? Figure out your fucking bedtime, right? It's just not that hard. So I have a quiz.
Yeah.
It's called chronoquiz.com. So if people go to CHRONOQUIZ.com, you can take this quiz. Now you might be saying, okay, well, what is this quiz going to tell me? So what's really interesting is we've discovered that there are 4 different chronotypes. So it used to be early bird, night owl. Then we thought, oh, there's got to be somebody in the middle. We used to call them a hummingbird. Okay, that was kind of the big vernacular in the science term, right?
Yeah.
So here's the thing. I'm a mammal. I'm not a bird, right? And so I'm just
Not a bird.
I can confirm this.
right?
Yeah.
So I'm just not down with being called a this bird or a that bird or things like that.
Yeah.
And then I also had patients in my population that didn't fit in any one of those categories.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting, because in my mind, I thought, well, you should fall into one of those 3.
Yes.
Well, what I actually discovered, and the reason I wrote the book, is there's a 4th chronotype. It's an insomnia chronotype. So we got early birds, we got middle of the road, we got night owls, and we got people who just don't freaking sleep very well.
Yeah.
Right. So, okay, now we've got these 4 things. We can identify them. How do we do that? I have a quiz. That's what Chrono Quiz is. So people can go there and you learn that you're one of these 4 things.
So
now,
go there now.
Yeah.
Or after the interview.
After the show, yeah,
Don't
yeah.
do it now because you'll
Right.
miss out. But go there after.
Yeah.
check it out for sure. But
Yes.
here's the thing that was so fascinating is you can only imagine, I'm in the marketing meeting for the book. Right. And we're sitting there with all these marketing executives and we're trying to come up with what are the names that people should be for these avatars that we've created.
Yeah.
Right. Good news. We picked ones that people would want to be. Apparently,
So smart.
right?
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be a porcupine.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to be a platypus.
Yeah.
Things like that didn't work out too well.
Like I'm a bear,
Right.
y'all.
Right.
I'm a bear.
Right.
Yeah.
Like bears are pretty badass.
Yeah.
Right.
That's bear. Yeah. Emilio Bear here.
Right. So that's what we tried to do is we wanted things that were fun, that were socially acceptable, and things that people would want to be.
Yeah.
We also chose animals that actually have the same chronotype that they represent.
Nice.
So early
Very
birds turn into lions.
Okay.
So let me tell you about lions. Lions are like my COOs. These are my type A personalities, kind of militant in their thinking. They'll go from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 to step 4, and they like completing a list every single day.
Yes.
Like those people are tuned in.
Yeah.
Now, there's pros and there's cons. A lot of them get up at like 4:30 in the morning because their melatonin turns off early.
Okay.
Genetically speaking, that's what's happening.
Wow.
Their melatonin turns off early, which naturally makes them wake up.
Yeah.
Right? They can't help it.
Yeah.
So
It might be
interesting.
annoying as heck if you're married to one of these people that wakes up at 4:45 every morning, right? And you want to
Yeah.
sleep in, but they really can't help it.
Yeah.
Right? And there becomes a problem too, is socially sometimes these lions, while people are like, oh my God, I want to be a lion. This is going to be the best. Like
Right.
dinner and a movie
So many.
is out for a lion.
Wow.
Yeah.
They're exhausted.
Yeah.
They've been up since 4:30 in the fucking morning.
Yes.
Like they're like, I am done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so socially they have some problems, right?
Yeah.
Now again, if you're a socialite, if you're somebody that gets energy from being social, if you're an extrovert, and you're married to or you're partnered with somebody like this, it can definitely have some differences.
Yeah.
People in the middle we call bears. So and about 15% of people are lions, this early bird category.
Okay.
About 50% are bears. Now, Emilio's a bear, and by the way, it's the best to be a bear.
Yay!
Nice.
We're there.
Well, I'll tell you why. Because
Yeah.
the entire universe actually works on a bear schedule. So think about it, right? So bears wake up around 7:30 or so. They go to bed around 10:30, 11 o'clock or so. They work from 9 to 5. That works perfect for them. If you're a lion, you're up at 4:30 and you are done by 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
Right? The universe doesn't work. It works better for those people.
Right.
But you know who it really doesn't work well for? The night owls.
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to tell you about night owls in a second. But bears are super interesting because they're extroverted. They're really good friends. They're the people who like to get shit done.
Yeah.
Right? So like lions are people who are great at organization and logistics and things like that and managing people. But bears are the people who like to do the work and do it really, really well. And they make up a large part of everybody. 50%, 1 in 2 people is a bear, right?
Thank you so much, Michael. Just seeing me for who I am.
I am seeing you. Absolutely. Absolutely. Then the next are wolves.
Okay.
So wolf represents night owls. Because remember, wolves are nocturnal creatures. Remember, lions first kill early in the morning. So they are early birds. Bears wake up with the sun, go to sleep with the sun. So they're in the middle. Wolves, very nocturnal creatures hunting at night. So they are the night owls. Now, full disclosure, I am a wolf. I have been my whole life. What's interesting from a relationships perspective is you both know my wife, Lauren, right? And so we're both wolves.
Oh, that's great.
Right. It worked out perfect, but we had no idea. We've been married for 23 years. 20 years. So like when you start to look at that as an idea, we really kind of went back in our history and we were like, I thought about it and I was like, well, if Lauren said, hey, come pick me up, I'd say, well, what time do you want me to get you tonight? She'd say, oh, 8. So I'd pick her up at 8. We get to dinner at 8:30. We'd finish dinner by 9:45. Maybe we'd go to the movies from 10 to midnight. Then we'd go out and have dessert or a drink afterwards. We'd get home at 2.
Yeah.
And that was completely normal for us. Like neither one of us had, like one person wasn't tired. One person wasn't too energized. And then we would go to bed at like 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. And we would sleep until, 10 o'clock the next day type of thing. If it was like a weekend. And so it was a whole different universe, but it was in sync.
Yes.
You know what's so interesting is that, like,
so interesting.
I think, because we need to retake the quiz as we were talking about before the show.
Yes.
And I'm like, as you describe you and your wife right now, I'm like, I think together we've turned each other into more of the wolves. Because we can go in and out, right, when things are social, whatever. Yeah. But I'm wondering if that's been the case. I kind of bounce in and out.
I talk about having little kid syndrome. Like sometimes I just don't. I'm like, oh, I want to watch a movie. I want to stay up. I want to have my zone out time. And so our term for it's been so challenging for me to learn how to go to bed at 10:30 or 11, the hours before midnight. But then everybody talks about how the hours before midnight really affect your health and your metabolism.
Completely false.
Ooh.
There's no data.
Well, no,
there's no
I'm getting
data.
it from, because, there's like this side of the coin and there's that side of the coin, which is why this great conversation.
So here's what's interesting about that idea of sleep before midnight and sleep after midnight.
Yeah.
It all has to do with when you wake up. Okay. So the moment of midnight in and of itself means nothing.
Interesting.
Okay? There used to be an old tale that would say, the 4 hours before midnight are the best sleep and the 4 hours after midnight are not the best sleep. And the science just doesn't bear that out at all.
This is so great for me to hear because I've been talking about, but because when I do go to bed at 10:30 and I do feel like I do get a little better sleep. I do feel like I get a little, I felt better. Like my hormones felt like they regulated themselves.
So that's a whole nother issue too that we haven't even brought up yet, which is women's hormones have a dramatic effect and it changes throughout this 30-day cycle.
Yes.
And their sleep does. You and I have actually had this discussion where I've talked with women and said you need maybe more sleep before your menstrual cycle, less sleep after your menstrual cycle. So maybe you change your bedtimes in association with something like that.
Very true.
Getting back to the chronotypes, this also falls into play with them. So we were talking about night owls, right? Yes. And so I'm a night owl. My wife is a night owl. Yes. We're very, night owls, generally speaking, believe it or not, are kind of introverted, which is interesting for somebody like me because most people would never consider me to be very introverted. Yes. But to be fair, I'm very extroverted on the topic of sleep.
Yeah, right.
Right? Because that's super easy because I know just about it. I mean, not everything, but I know a lot about it.
Yeah.
On other topics, I definitely find myself to be more introverted and kind of held back. As a wolf, I'm a night person. I don't go to bed before midnight ever. It just doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
And so what's interesting about that is also my wolves are my most creatives. These are my artists, my actors. Hello.
Yeah.
Right? These are my creatives because you know what? Your brain comes alive at night.
Yeah.
Right? And we see all of that coming out in that wolfish personality, right? And then there's a fourth one, and that's really what my contribution to the literature was I added a fourth chronotype, the insomnia chronotype, and we call them dolphins. Now, why do you call them a dolphin? So
I love dolphins.
So number one, exactly,
Yes.
everybody loves dolphins. So that's a good one. So interestingly enough, dolphins sleep unihemispherically. So half of their brain is asleep while the other half is awake and looking for predators all the time.
Wow.
Right. So what's fascinating about that is they're never quite asleep. Which kind of feels like somebody's got insomnia.
Yeah.
So, and it doesn't matter. They like being a dolphin, right? So that part's good. So it works out really, really well from that category. Now, to be fair, let me tell you about dolphins. These are my problem children, right? These are the reason I wrote the book, was for the dolphins.
Wow.
Okay, so
Really?
yeah, absolutely. So what we see is dolphins are a lot like lions with anxiety. So they like to get up early, they like to work hard, they like to make a list every day, but they have a level of anxiety or just a little bit of OCD. So OCD is obsessive compulsive disorder. Now, to be clear, I'm not diagnosing anybody with OCD, but when you know somebody who's got obsessive compulsive, they're very detail oriented. They're checking things many, many times, things like that. Yeah. That's full blown. When you look at it on a small scale, lots and lots of people have this level of anxiety that just perpetuates all the things that they do. And it has a big effect on their circadian rhythms, right? And this is all predicated on, these are genetic circadian rhythms, okay? So these aren't things that we pick, right? So if I took your DNA, like let's say you gave me your 23andMe data or your Ancestry.com data, I can actually run those past certain markers and I can actually show you exactly where on your DNA you are the chronotype that you are.
So fascinating.
Which is super duper cool, right?
Cool.
Because now, what else can you do with this, right?
Is that something you just see, or is that you put it in, plug it in somewhere? How do you kind of...
So it's really interesting. So a lot of times my clients will send me their 23andMe data, and I work with a group, and we have a way to take that raw data and run it down through 74 different markers. So there are 74 different markers in this company that I'm working with that have to do with sleep. So we look at things like sleep quality. Could you potentially in the future get sleep apnea? Like, do you have the genes for that? Do you have the genes for narcolepsy or restless leg syndrome or teeth grinding or quality of sleep or length of sleep? These are all things that we can learn by looking at your genetics. Now, to be fair, it's predictive. Now, there's a error, right, that goes in with that. Nobody is Nostradamus. Nobody's predicting everything perfectly. But this type of genetic testing serves out to be very, very great for me to do target picking. Right? Because I go down, it literally gives me a roadmap. Like if I did one for the two of you, like each one, I could literally tell you what times of a 24-hour cycle you should sleep, what times you should sleep. I could tell you likelihood of getting apnea, likelihood of getting restless legs, all of those types of things. So the information is very abundant, right? So once we start to understand that, then it gets very, very interesting, very quickly.
Well, see, this is why I'm so about, once we recognize as a whole that like personalized nutrition, personalized wellness, personalized sleep is where it's really at. You know,
there's no question. We have to personalize it, because let's look at the general recommendation of 8 hours.
Yes.
It's so fucking stupid. Okay? Because here's the thing. It's just a bad idea to give this overall rubric. Let me tell you where it came from. There was a study at Stanford, I think it was in the 30s. And what they did was they took a bunch of people and they put them in these chambers where they couldn't tell what time it was, no light cues, anything like that. I mean, they fed them, have a bathroom and all that stuff. They left them in there for 30 days. Okay. And here's what happened. The first couple of days, their sleep went like this. Lots and lots of sleep. 9 hours, 10 hours, 11 hours in a 24-hour cycle. And then all of a sudden, they caught up. And then it started to go down. And started to go down and started to go down. And it ended up being 8 hours plus or minus 15 minutes at the end of the experiment. With this group of people. The experiment was done, I think, in like the 40s.
Were these people moving? Were they exercising?
There's very little data on what they were doing inside this chamber. But what's fascinating about it is, think about life in the 40s and think about life now.
Dramatically different.
Just the stressors are different. Light exposure is different. I mean, there's so many different things that are going on there. It seems like we have a 50 to 60-year-old recommendation that we really need to
evolve.
Oh, for sure.
We need
There's
to evolve.
so many things like
that. And that's where the chronotypes
yes.
come in.
Yes, which is so powerful. So like my mom, like I said, registered dietitian, she does, works off of genetic testing as well.
Exactly.
And seeing phenomenal results from recommending personalized nutrition based off of genetics and personal microbiome, personal everything. With cancer, with my dad's cancer patients, like working with brain cancer, and it really it works, and so I'm so excited for the work that you're doing and saying, hey guys, personalized is what we need to do. It's not keto. It's not this for everybody. It's not that for everybody.
No.
It's
learn more about you. And if you guys are just tuning in, you're listening to Relationship Renegades on Fun for Life Radio. We're talking with Dr. Michael Bruce about the author of The Power of When, and we're talking about genetic circadian rhythms and chronotypes, where you can take to see what you are on chronoquiz.com. And great conversation, and welcome.
Yes.
So we got to answer the question that everybody doesn't know that they're going to ask yet.
Yes.
Right? So what is the purpose of chronotypes, and how can we utilize this to have better relationships?
Yes.
Right? Because that's kind of the crux of it, right?
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Number one, it would be great if our relationship partner happened to be the same chronotype as what occurred in my life. But to be fair, that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah.
Right? Now, chronotypes do attract each other, right? Because they like certain things and they have kind of similar personalities and things like that. But generally speaking, I have a lot more disparity in relationships than others. So, Michael, why would I want to understand chronotypes? It's great that he goes to sleep and I go to sleep at a different time, but what else could be valuable, right?
Absolutely.
Your entire hormones are based on your circadian rhythm, right? So we're talking about, so all of this is predicated on the idea that we have an internal biological clock. This internal biological clock has very set points, and at certain set points, things happen. So at 1 hour, for example, past your particular, in the middle of the night time, your melatonin may begin to slow down. Right? That happens with everybody, but it's at a different time, based on your chronotype.
Yes.
So, example, melatonin turns off early for lions, normal time for bears, late for wolves.
Yeah.
Right? So it becomes like, oh my gosh, what's going on? Well, melatonin is not the only thing. Cortisol follows the same rhythm. All of your stress hormones, all of your serotonin, all of your dopamine, all of your pleasure hormones. So this gets really interesting. So you can track hormones by your chronotype.
So cool.
Amazing.
So then what ends up happening is, the perfect time of day, when your hormones are elevated, particular hormones are elevated, you can focus and concentrate more at that particular time. When other hormones are elevated, now it's time for sex. When other hormones are elevated, now might be a time for me to do detail work where I'm super duper, very intricate stuff. But it's all based on where our hormones are naturally. And chronotypes are like the freaking treasure map to figure out when you are where you are.
Yes.
I think this is so huge.
Yeah. So what if you have
I knew that, but go ahead, baby.
What if you have, if you're a bear that's, with a lion, or a night owl that's with a lion, how do you plan the optimal time to have sex or to, to connect?
This is the number one question that I get asked based on the book.
During lunch.
What is the best time to have sex based on your chronotype?
Yes. Yeah.
So I'm going to give a general answer, and then I'm going to give a very specific answer.
Okay.
So general answer is pretty easy. So you need 5 hormones to successfully have sex. You need estrogen, testosterone, progesterone, cortisol, and adrenaline, and they all need to be high. Okay? One hormone needs to be low, and it's called melatonin. Okay?
Yeah.
We did a survey. Most people have sex between 10:30 and 11:30 at night. Roughly 74% of people. That's the time that seems to be happening. What do you think your hormone profile looks like at that time?
Not what it should be.
I was going to say that.
Melatonin's high, and all those other ones are low. So that's hint number 1 about when is the best time for sex.
Yes.
So hint number 2, what do most men wake up with in the morning?
A nice woody.
An erection. That's right.
Morning
wood. Right. Right. If that is not Mother Nature telling you when to use that thing, I'm really not sure who is. Right?
Yeah, man.
Seriously,
just like think about it from a pure hormonal standpoint, right?
Yeah.
Men are waking up out of REM sleep with an erection.
Yeah, ready to go.
Exactly. And that actually makes a lot of sense. So we actually started looking at different times when people were having sex. And what we discovered was if you have sex based on your chronotypical time, you have better connection with your partner and your performance is better.
Yeah.
So for guys, that means maybe lasting longer or having a better orgasm or not orgasming as quickly. For women, it might mean if you don't have orgasm, having orgasm.
Well, so many women struggle with having orgasms.
Absolutely.
And I think it's so interesting because, in movies and in everything, like it's almost like promoted that like, oh, you go on a date and then you have sex at nighttime. I think it's like almost programmed into us.
Yep.
So I think it's really interesting that if you're watching this and your sex life is suffering, that like maybe it's not because you're crazy or because something is wrong with you.
Not
it's
at
because,
all.
hey, I just need to know a better time.
Exactly.
to do
Exactly.
this.
So here's what I did in the book
Yes.
so I've given you the general now. Now we'll get specific, right?
Yeah.
So in the book, I actually created a matrix. So you can put your chronotype across the top and your partner's chronotype across the side. And we discovered times in the day based on the chronotype where both of you will have hormones that are elevated. Now, some of those times might be a little challenging.
Yeah, for sure.
But,
at work.
but,
Yeah, I'm in the middle of a workout.
but that could be a lot of fun too,
Yes.
right? That could be more adventurous. That could add a little bit more spice to
the
what might be
relationship.
an
Yes.
overall, COVID, we're all in the same place doing the same thing type of thing.
Yeah.
Might make it a little bit more interesting.
But also like going with the flow of your natural rhythms, which I think is so cute. Because I mean, we talked about this even before the show. Like it's just like the more that we live our lives according to nature, if you will, the way that things
100%.
just flow, things are abundant in I think all aspects of life.
Yeah.
And so I feel like, and I can raise my hand on this. Like I'm challenged with this, and I've gotten better and better and better. But I can be a lionette sometimes in terms of like, or maybe a mix between a bear and a lion, to where like I need to like. Okay, no, it's like this is the time where I get this done. I have to, and it may or may not be when I'm in the hormones are right, or my profile that you talked about is peaking, and it's like I've learned to get better at this, but I want to get much more about just
Dialed
hey,
in.
I don't feel like working right now. I'm very more creative at this point. Well, then let's do the creative aspects of things.
Yes.
Hey, I feel like whatever. Then let's just do that and be the bear and relax and do the thing.
So it's interesting that you say that. So I'm pretty friendly with Dave Asprey from Bulletproof.
Yes.
And when this book first came out, Dave called me up because I sent him one, and he was like, required reading for all Bulletproof people, like even in Bulletproof coaching. And you were a Bulletproof coach.
That's actually why I got it, because I'm a certified Bulletproof coach, and we had a great year-long training, and that's where I heard about your book.
Right.
Yeah.
And so what Dave did, which was really interesting, is he chronotyped his whole company.
Oh, that's so powerful.
And then he started taking meetings with like chronotypes to do at right time so that they could actually perform.
Brilliant.
Right? Yeah. So it's like all of a sudden you get all your creatives, and like having a creatives meeting at 7 a.m. on Monday is really fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Right? It just does not work with creatives. But if you had it like on Thursday at 4:30 with snacks and beer, you would have more creativity going than you knew what to do with, because you're reaching people at the moment when they can actually hear.
Yes.
And that's the difference. It's a communication tool, really.
Yeah, and a productivity tool, because you tell in your TED Talk, you talk about this.
Oh, yeah.
This patient that you basically like saved her job, her marriage, just off of like calling her boss and saying, hey, can she come to work from 10 at 10 o'clock? And I just think that was so, because I feel like most people have lived a life where they feel like they're unsuccessful, they're not good enough because they don't fit into whatever the mold that was set by somebody else. Maybe a lion that set the work hours.
Right.
That
Exactly.
And a lot of women, especially with like their hormone cycles, feel this like burnout and this stressed out of like, why is it so hard for me to be a part of the 5 a.m. club all the time?
Right.
Why is it so hard for me to do the things? Because we're taught that that's what high performers do.
Right. So it's so funny because the exact thing that you just said is what Dave Asprey said to me.
Yes.
He was like, because he's a wolf.
Oh, yep. Makes sense.
And when I went on his podcast and started talking with him about it, he said to me, he was like, Michael, we have to tell the world about night people.
Yes.
You know, we're out there and we're super creative and we're really fun and we're not lazy and we're not. You know,
yes, because that's what we start to believe.
Well, also night people, wolves in particular, have a tendency to be high risk takers and high novelty seekers, and that can get us in trouble.
Yeah.
Right.
I think I'm a wolf guy.
Oh yeah.
Well, you're an actress. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Like you might fall into that category as well. Yeah. And then the final category of the dolphins is, like I said, they're very, very interesting people. And
guys, you're going to want to listen to this. I'm going to cut him off just because if you're tuning in to cliffhanger here, guys. If you're tuning in, you're listening to Relationship Renegades on Fun for Life Radio. Yep. If you want to know about the dolphins, stay tuned. But we're going to get to know Michael a little bit more here with our rapid fire segment, and then we'll get back to talking about the dolphins and seeing if you're one of those. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Relationship Renegades on Fun for Life Radio. I'm one of your hosts, Rachele Brooke Smith.
And I'm Emilio Palafox.
And we are talking to the sleep doctor himself. And we're going to get into, again, more about the chronotypes and figuring out what you are and all that goes into that. But first, we're doing a rapid fire segment with you.
Okay.
So, babe, take us away.
All right. Dr. Michael Bruce, first question of the day here. What would be the absolute perfect day for you?
Oh, that's a great idea. So perfect day for me. I'm trying to actually do that now.
Yeah.
So I wake up right somewhere without an alarm, no snooze button, around 6:15 or so. I wake up and I immediately drink 15 ounces of water and get 15 minutes of sunlight in my mornings. And while I'm doing that, I've already fed my dog, and my dog and I are outside getting our sunlight together.
Nice.
And I'm sticking my feet on the earth.
Get some
Grounding.
PEMF, guys. PEMF.
Yes,
Yeah, grounding.
love it.
Put my feet on the earth in the mornings, and that's an important thing.
Yes.
Water, because sleep is a dehydrative event, so you need to rehydrate, not coffee. Sunlight turns off the melatonin faucet in my brain. Sticking my feet on the earth just makes me feel good.
Yes.
So
connection.
that's how I start my mornings.
Love it.
And at that point in time, fortunately, I have somebody that helps me run my scheduled day.
Yes.
So I'm able to do that. But then after I do that, and before I do my scheduled day and after I do my dog thing, I do breath work. So I do breath work every morning with our men's group.
That's right.
So we have a little side deal where we have men who get together and we do a video in the mornings of breath work. So I do that.
Yeah.
And then I am just started practicing meditation. Every day I'm doing it. I got this headband thing. I think I told you guys about it. It's called Muse.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't
I got
able
one of
to
those.
get my brain around how to meditate, but this thing gave me kind of the steps to do that. And so I think
great.
that's really how I start off my day. And then, my day goes well. I'm very, very fortunate. I'm in a
But
stage.
you worked really hard to be, actually.
I have. Yeah. I mean,
Michael is a grinder.
I am a grinder for sure. But I mean, it's like, especially now, I feel like now it's about reacting to people who are in trouble.
Yeah.
I feel so purposeful now because so many people are struggling with sleep in so many different ways. So I answer a tremendous number of questions online. I do interviews constantly just to try to get the information out there. And then I also have to take care of myself.
Yes.
So I definitely do the workout thing as often as I can. Actually, Emilio's helping me with my back right now.
Yeah.
So I can
Right.
get back into it. So thank you.
You're welcome.
And then I usually am in bed by midnight and chilling out, and I like to read a little bit before bed. I'm kind of a simple guy.
Yeah.
I kind of like my natural, simple kind of life.
Yeah.
Which I love. Like, it's so great that your perfect day is what you're doing pretty much every day, it seems like, which is awesome. Like,
I mean, I didn't think about it like that until you asked me the question like that, but I think you're kind of right.
Yeah.
I love it. I
love the simple things. Seriously, like I think so many people are just going through the motions and just like trying to get to the next thing, and it's like not appreciating like sometimes the small things that really, really do count. We've talked about that in other episodes, but let's get ready for the second question number two.
Okay.
I'm not very rapid fire.
I know, that's pretty long. That's okay. But it's
Sorry,
quick answers.
no
Okay.
worries.
So what makes you most nervous?
Oh, that's a good question. What makes me most nervous? It's weird because, as you know, being on camera and on stage, that doesn't make me nervous at all.
Yeah.
Like,
It's exciting.
It's like the more people in the audience, the better. I was fortunate. I spoke on Tony Robbins' stage, 13,000 people in the
So
audience type of thing.
cool.
And I couldn't have had more energy if I tried. Like, there was no nerves. Like, I was shaking because I was so pumped.
excited.
Like, my vibration was like this,
Yes,
right?
I love it.
But like anxiety and what's hard for me, I would say, is anything. I mean, on the personal side, anything medical that happens with my children. Massive anxiety that comes up there. Anything medical that happens with my wife.
Yeah.
Massive anxiety towards that. As somebody in the medical field, I have a lot more knowledge than I should. And so I start running through scenarios in my head. And I think that level of anxiety hits me sometimes.
Yeah.
And then also, to be fair, I mean, there are times when it's easy to be the sleep doctor and it's not as easy to be Michael.
Yeah.
And so there's times when it's not easy to be Michael. I think I have a pretty decent amount of anxiety. And I've shared with Amelia parts of my past and reasons why I have anxiety.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing isn't necessarily figuring out which situations trigger it, but more how internally I can recognize it and work on it. And I do. And things like meditation, breath work, PMF, and having brotherhood and friends is really what works for me and lowering my anxiety.
Well, thank you so much for being raw and real and authentic, because I think it's so good for people to hear that, like, hey, this guy who is so smart and helps so many people is also human. You know what I mean?
There's no question.
He's also human, and like he struggles. So I think that's how we do connect with people is when we share our raw, real, our challenges. You know?
Oh yeah. Well, to be clear, I have plenty of challenges.
Amazing. Number 3, what are you too hard on yourself for?
Ooh, that's a good question.
So that's a good one. So I'm one of those guys where, like, if I'm doing breath work and the goal is to hold your breath for 2 minutes and I make it to 158, I'm pissed. You know? Like that's me. So I have a tendency to be very exact in my goals, and when I don't reach or surpass those goals, I give myself a hard time for sure. And I mean, honestly, like somebody once said this to me, it's like I have an audio engineer in my head, and there are days when he's not very nice. And that's really hard some days. You know?
Absolutely does. One of my favorite things to always ask myself is, am I choosing to be my best friend or my worst critic right now?
Right.
And doing my very best to try and be my best friend.
And you know what? And you know what's hard for me? That's a great question. What's hard for me is sometimes I feel like, I don't know if other people feel this way too, like sometimes I feel like I can't even trust my own brain. Sometimes. It's like sometimes my brain just goes negative and I just walk down that negative path, and it takes a couple of minutes to be like, whoa, I'm in a bad space. I need to bring myself back. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that's hard to do. And I mean, just in relationships in general, it's always been, it's been a struggle. At times, but I think when you really bring it back to sort of the center of honesty and integrity and just being open, I think it ends up working. Does that make sense?
100%. I mean, that's why there's so many different tools and tricks. That's why we like to share, like the raw and real, what helps, like all those things that you're choosing to do. Like the awareness factor is everything. You know, that you're like, I can catch myself and then I can bring myself back.
And I mean, me personally, I'm happy to share. Like, I actually do work with a hypnotherapist. And that's been, so here's the thing. I thought hypnotherapy was total BS. I was like, there's no way, it's not going to work. And so first of all, you have to be hypnotizable to be hypnotized, which apparently I am. And it's been incredibly helpful. So one of my challenges has been physical. So you asked me like, so I'm hard on myself based on my body. And so I used to weigh 195 pounds. I'm 155 pounds now. And so now my goal is no longer that weight loss and becoming healthier. My goal now is to maintain and to really pay attention to the ideas of performance and, you know, setting those goals and really seeing what I can do, because honestly, I'm 52 years old. I've never been in better shape in my life. So I'm kind of stoked. Like, I got this whole body thing going now. I'm like, what can I do? Like, let's go check it out.
I love that. You and my parents both. And that's a whole other story. Okay, so fourth question, final rapid fire question is, what's one of your favorite travel experiences?
Great question. So my most favorite travel experience was when my daughter and I went to Asia.
Ooh,
by
very
far.
Cool.
So I was very fortunate. I was doing a press junket for Princess Cruise Lines. I represented them for a long time, still do. And they brought me all over Asia to talk about this new bed that we had produced. And so I asked them, so my daughter actually got interested in Mandarin from this trip. So I took my daughter and we went to Singapore, Jakarta, Tokyo, and Shanghai across 12 days.
So cool.
Yeah, I remember you telling me this.
And my daughter, this was the second big trip that I took my daughter on in Europe, and my daughter was 15 at the time. So imagine being a 15-year-old girl traveling with your dad, first class, all the way, top hotels in the world, and she's like ordering room service every night, right? And I mean, we're going out to beautiful restaurants and we're seeing all kinds of cool sights. And meanwhile, I have to work all day. And so what was really fun was she got a guide that would come to the hotel every day, and she would Google the night before, what's cool to do in Tokyo. And
cool.
It was unbelievable. And because we work with Princess Cruise Lines, it's hospitality. So they know all the people. She was front of the line on everything. So my favorite trip by far was in Asia with my daughter.
That is so cool. I love it.
And I'll tell you, it changed our relationship.
Wow.
It changed our relationship. We are tighter now. I have a better appreciation for her as a human. Which is an interesting view from a dad.
So important though. You know?
So important. My daughter's a badass. My daughter kicks butt. And so it's so much fun to watch her growing. And so, my favorite trip by far is with my daughter.
So cool. And thank you for
I do have another one though that was with my son.
Yes.
Why not? Well, I do, right before you share that, I love, when I started getting to know Michael more, and when Rachel did, it's like, I love how much that you talk about your son and your daughter and your family, your wife.
It says so much about you.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
you said so many beautiful and incredible things about your wife, your son, your daughter, but like very specific, amazing stories. And it's like we love to hear about those because in today's day and age, like there's so many people just going through the motions and rushing to the next thing,
Yeah.
And although we are not perfect, we can all like fall into that and kind of ebb and flow with that. But it's like we could always choose now how we want to show up. And it's just beautiful the way you share.
Somebody who is extremely busy, travels all over the world, figures out a way to bring his family along with him. And I think that is so cool, coming from like my dad's a neurosurgeon. I didn't get to see him very much growing up. But some of my most favorite times was when he actually just brought me to the hospital with him. And so I think, for parents out there being like, how do I create a better connection with my family, is like using your creative power to figure out creative ways to spend time together.
And that's what I did with my son. So my son's been coming with me to business meetings since he was 9.
So cool.
And it's been great. The other vacation that I took, I have to tell you about, was with my son. And so we went to a auto racing school called Bondurant in Arizona. And we did 3 days throwing Hellcats around a track, and it couldn't have been more fun bonding experience for the two of us. So it's like my travel, really, I like bringing my kids because I'm busy and because I'm out a lot. It's a great time for me to have a lot of centered attention and focus with them. And, it's hard. My son said to me something that I'll share. He said, "Dad, you missed every single performance that I had one year. Every one. I missed every single performance he had one year." Right? And he and I are like this. Right? So for folks out there, who are thinking about relationships and have kids, it doesn't have to be quantity. It really can be quality.
I love that.
And my son knows I love him.
It's so important right now to talk about, because if you are a very busy person, like really allocating time and figuring out creative, fun experiences. So if you are a father and a son who love to drive, go to that race,
exactly.
Like, create that experience, or go on a travel, I just think it's so important because...
And I love the way that you use create, because as you guys know, Relationship Renegades is all about creating the love and lifestyle you've always wanted, right? It's like, it's about creating experiences like you're sharing right now. And we can always have that creative power that you're talking about. And so, absolutely.
So let's get back to this dolphin thing, because I want all the people out there that are like, okay, because I think people who have insomnia, people don't sleep well, get a bad rap, or they think, again, you get into all these identity issues of like, I'm not good enough, and I can't fit in with people, and I can't accomplish things.
Well, it's fascinating.
And for those just talking, if you're just joining, you're listening to Relationship Renegades on Fun for Life Radio. We're about to talk about what a dolphin is, and the reason being is because we're talking about the power of when. Dr. Michael Bruce right now talking about his chronotypes and how they can fit into your lifestyle, really figuring out who you really are genetically and how the different rhythms can really play well into your personal, professional, intimate lives and more. So thank you for joining us, Michael. Let's talk about the dolphin.
So I love it when he does that. He's so good at it.
So good at it.
He's silky smooth over here. Right? Silky smooth.
It's so interesting. It's not a podcast, it's a radio show. You gotta you gotta plug in on this.
It's awesome. I love it. So when you look at the power of when, and you look at dolphins, and you look at communication, that's really where kind of the rubber meets the road, right? And so communication turns out, the book turned out to be a communication tool more so than a sleep habits tool, because when for example, that let's just make it up. Let's say that you're a wolf and you're a bear. Okay. And so you wake up at, let's say, 7:30 in the morning, and she has no interest in waking up at 7:30, because most wolves have no interest in waking up at 7:30, right? So then you kind of go on about, but you feel like you're off sync because you've done one thing and you're starting your day, and she's done something different. She's starting her day. And so some people can get resentful of that. Like, why does she get to sleep in? Right? Like, why does he get to sleep in? Right? Why does he get to stay up? And I don't get to do that. But once you start to understand that it's not a choice. It's who you are, right? It's the dunking the basketball thing again, right? So what's interesting is if you realize that your partner is a wolf, you don't get upset when they don't come to bed at 10 o'clock, because you're like, well, of course they wouldn't come to bed at 10 o'clock. They're a wolf. Why would they?
Right.
And then all of a sudden that resentment moves and gets lifted, right? And that's where it gets really interesting for dolphins. So dolphins, have a lot of anxiety, but once they lock into a sleep schedule, and I give you a sleep schedule, so if you go to chronoquiz.com, you take the quiz, you actually get an email back with a personalized sleep schedule for your chronotype. You don't get everybody's, you get yours.
Which is so important.
Yeah.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. But if you know what the other people in your house do, you can start to predict things.
Yes.
Right? And so, like, as an example, as a wolf, my wife knows, don't have a conversation with Michael at 6 o'clock in the morning. Because it's just not going to go well.
That's so mean.
Right? I'm just
Don't
like,
talk to me.
right? I'm just not there. Like my brain hasn't woke. But if you want to have that conversation with me, if you have a little bit later, I'm going to be much better with you, and I'm going to have a better relationship with you. And I'll give you an example that I use that I discovered this with my daughter. So adolescents, 13 to 18-year-olds, they're all wolves, almost exclusively, all of them. Do you remember when you were a teenager?
Yeah.
What'd you want to do?
That's true.
Sleep until 2, sleep until 12, right? It's so much fun, right?
Yes.
That actually, all of us, by the way, go through all the chronotypes.
So interesting.
So when we're
Yes.
itty bitty babies, we're lions, right?
Yeah.
Right. We
All
get up at
babies are
super
lions.
early and they go to bed super early.
Yeah.
And then when you're in the toddler middle schooler, you're a bear.
Yeah.
Right. And then when you hit high school, you're a wolf.
And isn't it crazy that high
totally
school forces you to be something different than, like, if high school could start at 11 instead of,
don't even get me started.
like,
There's
On
a
the whole
whole
education
nother,
system.
there's actually, so school start times have turned out to be a massive, massive issue. We now know if we start school an hour later for high schoolers, they'll do a full letter grade better in their first 2
makes
periods.
so much sense.
Because they're finally awake.
Yes.
Yeah.
So getting back to the communication idea.
Yes.
So with my daughter, one of the things I would go in the morning and I would say, "Hey, good morning, Carson. Wake up. You know, how's your day going to be today?" And she'd be like, "Leave me alone." Right?
That was so mean.
Right? But if I walked into her room and asked almost the same question at 4 o'clock in the afternoon,
Yeah.
if I said, "Hey, Carson, you know, how's your day today?" I'm in there for an hour and a half.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So just to back up for a second, 52-year-old dad, 15-year-old daughter, she actually wants to spend time with me.
Right.
Yes.
It doesn't happen that often. Like,
Yeah.
you guys are young.
Yes.
Like, you don't
Yes.
get it.
For
like, when
sure.
you have a
But I've heard
15-year-old
that,
kid.
But I remember what it was like to be
Yeah,
that young.
well, they-
I
right.
remember. Like, it
Right.
really depended on the time. It
Yeah.
actually depended on the
And
time.
so,
Yeah.
the time is the key.
Yes.
Right? And it's what
Right.
time in the day
Yes.
is your person that you want to have a relationship. Where are they?
Yeah.
Because if you know where they are, then you can meet them where they are.
Yes.
And then you guys can accomplish goals together.
So important.
Beautiful.
But I
Right?
think about the work that you're doing is one of
Beautiful.
my favorite words is compassion.
Yes.
Right? And I think this allows for that compassion.
100%.
Because
And
if you don't
self-acceptance
know
that you
what
talked
you
about.
don't know, you're always going to be hitting this wall. But once you can learn more about, like, when you operate the best and when your partner operates the best, rather than being like, he's always sleeping in, or he's always trying to talk to me when I don't want him to,
Right.
you can just have this compassion for, like, I get it now.
Right.
I get why you're
Right.
this way, and I get why I'm this way, and I get why we're not working.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I could totally understand how you've been able to save more relationships through sleep and through this understanding than anything else.
It's been fascinating.
Yeah.
And also kind of what you kind of hit it on the nail as to one of the themes on the show, or just with the brand of being like that self-acceptance, because not only now it's beautiful that we're getting the self-acceptance on a chronotype level,
Right.
but just like self-acceptance we talk about all the time in other shows, because, the fact that, my brain is different than her brain. When you look
It
at like
is, by
Alison
the way.
Armstrong
Very
Very
different.
different.
work and
Very
and
different.
accepting
I
that.
know them both pretty well now. Very different brains.
And so, like, a lot of men don't know that women have a different brain, literally.
Yes, literally.
And vice versa. And it's like when
Yes.
you start there and you're like, then there's more compassion. If you know the
Yes.
chronotypes, there's more compassion. And so it's
Yes.
like, and just that awareness,
Yes.
like anything else,
Mm-hmm.
you have more awareness around something, then you guys can operate a whole lot better together.
Totally.
And not only with your relationship to self and that self-acceptance, but as you guys know, with the
others.
relationship to others, the world around us, and then, of course, to God, source, universe, whatever you want to call it,
course.
this greater force, all of that. So love it.
Because I think really you have to, and this just came up to me, in order to have deeper connection, which obviously the show is a lot about, and people are like, I want to connect more with my loved ones.
Right.
Without a certain amount of compassion, you can't have that connection.
That's right.
And so I think if you really want that connection, there has to be this level of compassion, and that compassion comes from the awareness of who we actually are and who we're dealing with. So yeah, super cool. And
do we need a little bit more compassion during the COVID times? I wonder.
We could really use some
I think we could use some more compassion during
time.
COVID for sure.
Well, I want to take a quick break because we kind of want to come back. We want to hear one of Dr. Michael Bruce's favorite finds. So stay tuned. You're listening to Relationship Renegades on Fun for Life Radio. We will be right back. Welcome back to Relationship Renegades on Fun for Life Radio. I'm one of your hosts, Rachele Brooke Smith.
And I'm Emilio Palafox.
And we're interviewing the sleep doctor himself. And we're getting into, we're going to do these two segments in one. So we have a segment called What's Your Favorite Find, as well as a Renegade Moment. And we'll start with the Renegade Moment, one of our favorite segments on the show. Renegade Moment. Babe, you want to tell them what the Renegade Moment is all about?
Sure. So Renegade Moment is all about, it's a breakthrough moment, a time where you really chose differently or went against the grain or just did something or experienced something that truly changed your life and you became a different person. It was that breakthrough moment. So what is your renegade or breakthrough moment?
So I actually experienced my renegade breakthrough moment with you.
Oh, wow.
Actually.
Wow, brother.
So Emilio and I participated in a breathwork, and I had never done breathwork before.
Yeah.
And to be clear, Emilio was literally right next to me.
That's right.
And he and I had a very in-depth, very private, very personal conversation about our pasts before, and it helped open me, I guess, up to the idea of breathwork. I had never experienced breathwork before. I thought it was like, how could you get anywhere in therapeutic world by just breathing? Like that made no sense to me whatsoever. And you actually convinced me. You were like, dude, go do it.
Yeah.
Like you were just because we were talking and I was like, I don't know, maybe I should. And you're like, shut up, go do it. You know? And I did. And it was, I mean, it can easily describe it as life-changing.
Yeah.
Like easily, like we were with a lot of people and everybody was tearful. Everybody had breakthroughs. And that was my breakthrough moment. I remember it very, very distinctly. And you were right there.
I was right there.
Cool.
I feel like there's no coincidences, everything in life. I think the way that we love to talk about things, like, I feel like life is this big puzzle piece and we all get different puzzles at different times and we're slowly starting to put it together. And it's like, I feel like the world, God, source, universe, whatever it is always conspiring for you. It's always happening for you, right? And I feel like I love to kind of now be the observer of all these things as life happens or how life is lived through me, really. And so like when we were having that conversation and just being so grateful for that conversation, just because like those are the moments that we live for. It's like there's always the things to do, but it's like life is a collection of these like moments and these experiences such as that when we were in the hot tub and just having those kind of conversations to like having the breathwork experience. Yeah. And it's like I was always that person who never, hated service level talk and was just like always late night drinking with the buddies, just these tequila conversations that we would have because we would just go deep on some stuff and I'd be there creating space. And so thank you for sharing that. I had no idea that was a great breakthrough moment for you. And I'm glad that I was a part of it.
Biggest breakthrough moment I've had in I don't know how many years. And so thank you, Emilio, for that opportunity.
And that's so cool that you're sharing that. People listen to, I think breathwork has been, at least in our world, just talked about more and more and more because it is able to have those breakthroughs for people.
I mean, it's like, where did this come from?
I know. But what's so interesting, if you're listening, and like my mom has talked about this because we talk about, this breathwork session, we have these powerful breakthroughs. And I was like, I do breathwork. I was like, Mom, are you sure, Mom? Because I don't know if you're really doing breathwork. Because it's more than just taking deep breaths. It's called work for a reason. It really does feel like work.
It's called work for a reason.
And really powerful emotions come up. And really to me, I feel like this feeling of this deep connection or emotional release or even like past traumas I've been through, being able to release. And, I just think it's so important for people to know, just look up breathwork, like the real breathwork though, and really try it out. There's so many powerful playlists and practitioners that teach this, and it's really life-changing work.
Yeah, people should check it out. I like Wim Hof. It's a good place to start because he's got a lot of really good beginners and information there. But breathwork it's amazing to me that it's not taught when you're getting your PhD in clinical psychology, which is what I was doing, and I'd never heard of it. So for folks out there, psychologists may or may not know about some of this stuff. So, you can educate your therapist too.
The breath work that we did was called golden air breath. There's lots of different terms for it, but it's about It can be anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. You have it's kind of a 3-part breath work. You breathe 50%, well, as much as you can from your lower belly. Then when you don't have enough breath there, then you breathe from the chest area, and then you have a full release on the exhale. So it's kind of like first part on the lower belly, second part on the chest, and then a full release out. And you're doing this all through the mouth for 45 minutes to an hour. And there's a whole lot more details to talk about.
Dr. Michael Bruce, what is your favorite find? Something like a book, a practice that you want to share with the audience?
So it would be easy to say breath work again, but I'm not going to do that. So I recently started meditating. Yeah. And I got to be honest with you, I'm not a meditator. It wasn't something that I liked. So I actually bought this thing called a Muse, M-U-S-E.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And it actually walked me through how to meditate. And it does it in a very unique way. So I think that is one of the finds that has been helpful for me in my waking life. Yes. But I also have a find from my sleeping life. So I've been working with this company called EBB, E-B-B, and they have this thing where they cool your forehead and it slows down your thinking. Ooh. What? Yeah. So the number one thing that I hear from insomnia is I can't turn off my brain. Yeah. Right? Very common. Lots of people out there probably experience that. So there's this thing called the neuroprotective effect of cold. So when a person cracks their head open and they end up in the emergency room, your dad probably knows all about this. We put them in ice. We wrap their head in ice to slow things down in order for the cerebrospinal fluid and the blood flow to start to slow down. Okay? Well, that slowing down is kind of an interesting idea. So this one researcher, Eric Knopfsinger, started to look at people who had problems turning off their brain at night. And when he did an MRI with people while they were trying to fall asleep, he discovered that there was tremendous extra blood flow in the frontal cortex where they couldn't turn off their brain. And he remembered this neuroprotective effect of cold. So he created a device that actually sits on your forehead. You wear it all night long and it keeps your forehead at very particular temperatures.
Wow.
Okay, so I would literally. Wow. And so I was like, this sounds interesting, but I don't have that problem. Yeah. Like, I don't have a problem falling asleep. I don't have that. I can't turn off my brain. They were like, look, we'd like you to try it. Would you be willing to try it? I'm like, yeah, no, try it anyway. I mean, I try all kinds of interesting things. Right. So I put it on and I turned it on and I closed my eyes. And when I opened my eyes, it was 6:15 in the morning.
Wow.
And I was like, what just happened? Wow. So then
slept better than you have.
I mean, no awakenings, but I was like still in like where I was. Like I was lying there and just out. My wife was like, okay, you were done. And then I did it. I didn't do it the next night. Yeah. And I didn't get as good a sleep. And so then I did it the third night. And it did. And so what I think it's doing is it helps kind of consolidate your thinking. It helps slow things down and it helps you just kind of get there.
Oh, I want to try this. You sold me.
I know. Well, so my wife asked me to try it and I told her to get her own.
Right. All right. And where can people find that?
It's called EBB Therapeutics. But if you go to my website, thesleepdoctor.com under featured products or tested products, you'll find it there.
So incredible.
Nice. Great finds.
This has been such an amazing show. You guys, we're definitely going to have him back on again.
Definitely going to have a part 2, if not more.
Incredible. Again, if you're listening to this, please, if you got inspired or you learned something, please share this with a friend or loved one so you can also help them and we can just share the love. And definitely go to, again, where is the best place for people to find you?
thesleepdoctor.com, and that's my handle on all the socials. So you can find me on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on Twitter, there are other ones, I'm sure. Yeah. Instagram.
We got Clubhouse now that we're
Clubhouse, so I'm the Sleep Doctor on all of them.
So incredible. Definitely go check him out. I know that he obviously you can hear cares so much about people and just really wants to help. So thank you for doing the work that you do in the world. We're so grateful to have you in our lives. And I'm so excited to retake your test because I really, and for him to take
the genetics and the whole thing. We're going to do all of that again.
Absolutely.
So is there any final words that you want to leave people with?
So be true to yourself, accept yourself, and you will sleep better. It's really that simple. I tell people all the time, sleep is a lot like love. The less you look for it, the more it shows up.
Ooh, I love that.
Mic drop. Lot said there. Very profound, simple yet very profound if you really reflect and marinate and digest that. Yeah, Michael, brother, this has been a pleasure. Thank you for your time and energy. Yes. As you guys know, we're all about co-creating a world where healthy relationships are the new norm. Yep. And so, Michael, today, thank you for helping us do that.
Yes.
Thank you.
And if you want to connect with us more, again, Relationship Renegades Tribe on Facebook and Relationship Renegades across all social media. Stay tuned. We will see you next time.
Love you guys.
Peace out.
Sweet dreams.